What would you do if a police officer suddenly stopped you and started patting you down? Would you know your rights? Would you know what the police are legally allowed to do and what they aren't? I'm Joel Chorny, a criminal defense attorney in Tucson, Arizona, and today I'm going to break down exactly what your rights are during a stop and frisk, what the police can and cannot do, and what you should do if it happens to you. But before we get into it, let's cover something that's really important. A quick disclaimer. This video is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. Every case is different and laws may vary depending on where you are. I am licensed to practice law here in Arizona, so my advice is based on Arizona law. If you're outside of Arizona, I recommend speaking with an attorney in your jurisdiction. None of what I'm going to discuss here is meant to create an attorney-client relationship, and if you're seeking specific advice from a lawyer, I urge you to either call my office or reach out to an attorney who can help you out. So, what is a stop and frisk? Well, let's start with the basics. A stop and frisk is when a police officer briefly detains you and pats you down, or rather pats down your outer clothing to check for weapons. Now, they can't just do this for any reason or for no reason. They need to have what's called a reasonable suspicion. And reasonable suspicion is a suspicion that you are involved in a crime and that you might be armed and dangerous. But it has to be reasonable in that they have to be able to explain what it is that gave them that suspicion, and that has to be the kind of suspicion that any reasonable officer would have, or at least that officer under the circumstances would reasonably have. Importantly, it has to be articulable. They have to be able to point to the factors that led them to have that suspicion. So it is important to keep in mind that they don't get to just pat you down based on a hunch or because you look suspicious. They have to be able to explain why they stopped you. So what are your rights during a stop? If you're stopped, you do in fact have rights, and knowing them can make all the difference. You, first of all, have the right to remain silent. You don't have to answer questions about where you're going or what you're going to be doing or what you are doing or who you're doing it with. In some states, you may have to identify yourself, but you do not have to provide any additional details. Additionally, you can ask if you're free to leave. You can calmly say, am I being detained or am I free to go? If they say you are free to leave, walk away calmly with no sudden movements. If the police say that you are not free to leave, then remain. However, police must have a reasonable suspicion to stop you. They cannot stop you just because they feel like it. They must be able to point to specific facts that suggest you're involved in a crime. Now, let's talk about the frisk itself and what your rights during the frisk are. If an officer frisks you, here's what you need to know. First, they can only frisk you if they suspect you have a weapon. If they're just curious, that's not legal. A frisk is not a full search. They can pat down your outer clothing, but they cannot go into your pockets or bags unless they feel something that could be a weapon. You could clearly state, I do not consent to this search. That doesn't mean that they'll stop, but it preserves your rights if you need to challenge it later. If, for example, they have a body camera and it captures you saying, I do not consent to this search, it's going to be hard for them to argue that you did in fact consent to that search. It is extremely important that you not resist physically. Even if it's unfair, resisting can make things much worse. Stay calm and handle it later in court, ideally with the help of a lawyer. So what do we do after the stop and frisk? Once the stop is over, you're not done yet. First, you want to try to get the officer's name and badge number. If they violated your rights, this is important because you're going to want to be able to identify the officer who did it. Secondly, you want to write everything down. Time, location, what was said. Details fade fast, so you want to do this right away so that you can keep all of those details fresh and preserved for later use. Third, if you were searched illegally, a lawyer can help. A lawyer can file a motion with the court to have any evidence that was found during an illegal frisk thrown out and not used. So you want to consult with an attorney after you have had this experience so that the lawyer can help you figure out what your remedies are and how to pursue them. If you feel your rights were violated, you can file a complaint with the police oversight agency in your area, but I strongly urge you to not talk about doing that with the offending officer. It's only going to piss them off and make things worse. And always file the complaint later, and you don't have to let the officer know that you're going to do that. In fact, you should. That would only make things worse. So a few final thoughts and call to action. The bottom line is that knowing your rights is the best defense you have. Stop and frisk encounters shouldn't be random or abusive, but they do in fact happen. If you're ever in this situation, stay calm, assert your rights, and call a lawyer if needed. If you found this helpful, please hit like and subscribe. I'll be covering more of your legal rights in upcoming videos. And if you need legal advice, call my office today. I help people fight back against unfair police encounters every day. It is important that you stay informed, you stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.